Mr. Sergeant of Arms, invite the members into the chamber and close the doors. I hereby declare the House of Representatives of the 113th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee now in session. Will the members please stand? Will the visitors in the galleries please stand and remain standing through the Pledge of Allegiance? Representative Todd will introduce the chaplain of the day. Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I am very proud to introduce to you Pastor Clarence Curry of New Day Ministries in downtown Jackson, Tennessee. Pastor Curry is a dedicated servant of the people of Jackson and Madison County, and matter of fact, all over West Tennessee. He has a ministry that's far-reaching, and he is a true man of God that has been very supportive of me. He prays for me often. He prays for you, and you know as much as I do how important that is in this role. And so without any further ado, Pastor Curry, would you lead us in prayer this morning?
Heavenly Father, we thank you on today, God. We thank you for your grace. We thank you for your mercy on today, God. We pray for the House of Representatives on today, God, that you touch their lives on today, God. Whatever they got up before you on the rest of the 9 months, God, that you bless their going out and bless their coming in, God. God, not only bless them, but bless their families, God. God, in the name of Jesus, we thank you for this great state of Tennessee, that you continue to bless us like never before. Lead and guide us in wisdom throughout the year. In Jesus' name, we thank God and amen.
Representative Todd will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I'm over here.
Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Roll call.
Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 90 members present.
Let the journal reflect Representatives Williams, Powell, and Davis are excused. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Welcoming and honoring.
Welcome and honoring Representative Barrett. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Here in just a few minutes, the Hickman County Bulldogs will be tipping off the TSSAA boys basketball tournament against Whites Creek. Want to wish the Bulldogs luck today. And then later on this afternoon, I'll also have the Creekwood Redhawks will be playing against Red Bank. So good luck to the Bulldogs and the Redhawks today.
Chairman Faison.
Hey, members, can I have your attention just for a minute, please? I want to ask for a moment of silence. Before I do that, I want to tell you about a very special lady. Our friend, Greg Vital's mom, her name is Rita Vital. I've had on several occasions the great pleasure and honor of being with her, of being prayed over by her, cooked for, and loved on. Every human that came to her house was loved and prayed for. She was one of the most special ladies you ever met. And this morning she went to be home with her Lord and Savior. And would you give some love to our friend, Greg Vital, pray for his family. And Mr. Speaker, a moment of silence. Thank you.
Representative Ritchie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's my honor to welcome our page that I've got here. Calvin, go ahead and come on up front so everybody can see you. Members, please put him to work today. He's excited to be here, and I also want to welcome his mom and dad and sister, Major Brandon Ledbetter, Miss Heather, and his sister, Sailor, up here in the balcony. If y'all don't mind giving them a round of applause. Thank you.
Representative Reedy.
Thank you, Mr. Speakers. Members, currently going through the Senate Joint Resolution 1162. I'll just read a portion of what's taking place this 100th anniversary. This year marks the 100th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Ireland and the United States. Over these 100 years, the U.S.-Irish relationship is a shining example of how ancestral ties, historical connections, cultural affinities, and shared values can create a foundation for the enduring partnership and mutual prosperity. And of course, Mr. Speaker, there are those of us who are known for their American Irish State Legislature caucus. And this Saturday is the Irish celebration in Houston County. Y'all come out. Going to be a big day, big parade. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Bain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to recognize a very special person. My mother, Julianne, is here today. So if everyone could give her a warm welcome. Thank you so much.
Representative McCalman at Representative Whitson's desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, if you would please welcome my page from Eastern Williamson County, Mr. Lincoln King. He is a second grader at Clovercroft Elementary.
Representative Whitson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would like to welcome my page, Evie Blackhurst. She's also from Williamson County. So put them to work today, guys. Okay? Thank you.
Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, if you will look at the front of the chamber, there's a familiar face that you see up there. Our chief, Kevin Johnson, and with him is one of the most adorable young ladies you will ever meet, Miss Ava Drew Johnson. That is his daughter and little girl. Make her welcome, please.
Representative Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, my colleague from District 95 likes to call his district the District of Champions, but right now, District 96 next door also has their share of champions, and they'll be recognized tonight. First of all, as my colleague Representative Parkinson mentioned the other day, the Douglas High School boys team will be playing in Murfreesboro. They are currently 33-0, and we're looking forward to them being 36-0 at the end of this weekend. And also honored will be KJ Tenner, who is at Cordova High School in my district, who has been named Class 4A Mr. Basketball. And
Representative Carringer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to welcome my dear friends. We've known each other since we were children. So that tells you how long we've known each other. Is Wendy and DJ Witt from Knoxville. They're also my constituents. I just want to welcome you all and love you all and your family so much.
Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to do two things. First, I'd like to ask Jeremiah Crane to come forward. He's my page of today. He is from Murfreesboro. His mother is here, Miss Monique Johnson, and his grandfather is a powerful preacher out of Atlanta, the Reverend Dr. Roy Johnson. So let's welcome Jeremiah Crane. Jeremiah Crane. And secondly, to Representative Thompson's point, Memphis Douglas, they are 33-0, but they're playing Austin East today, so they're going to be 33-1 and headed back west to Memphis today. Thank you, Mr.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like for the House to help me make welcome my favorite nephew today, who came along with the pastor of the day, Pastor Curry, Mr. Obie Beard. If you stand up there and wave at everybody, he's my favorite nephew. Help me make him welcome today.
Representative Mitchell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, if we could have a moment of silence and prayer for Representative Hemmer's father. He had, Phil Hemmer had a pretty bad heart attack last night, and he's looking at open heart surgery as soon as he can get over the flu, unfortunately. So if we can just have a moment of silence for Phil Hemmer. Thank you.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to welcome Lincoln leadership. Mr. Jim Malone brought a group up today. We're glad to have you all. Y'all stand up. Make them welcome.
Representative Capley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I just wanted to congratulate the Frank Hughes School out of Clifton, Tennessee, as advancing to the Single A Final Four in basketball. So y'all give them a round of applause, please.
We'll do that. Thank you later.
Welcome and honoring. Anyone else? Representative Pearson.
Thank you, Speaker. Just a few things. One, the Wells family are over in the Senate today. I want to thank them for their courage to come back to this Capitol and continue to fight for just laws. Mrs. Wells and Mr. Wells. Second, today, 1 year ago, District 86 elected me to this General Assembly in our first general election. And so just to my constituents who have given me the honor of my life to serve them, to commit to this movement for justice rooted in love, thank you all for your support and your encouragement as we continue this journey together. And lastly, and extremely importantly, today is my mother-in-law's birthday. And the greatest gift that I was given was my fiance and soon-to-be wife, Oceanae Argillium. And so I just want to wish my Mama Rosie a happy birthday. And if you would, give her a round of applause.
Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I joined the chorus of celebrating our teams in the TSSAA basketball tournament as my alma mater, Whites Creek High School, will be playing in the Class 2A State Boys basketball tournament this morning against Hickman County. And so one of us will be happy sometime today, either me or Representative Barrett. So again, let's get a round of applause for Whites Creek Boys basketball team, please, everybody.
All right. Anyone else under welcome and honoring? Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction to resolutions.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With all resolutions properly filed, be introduced pursuant to Rule number 17 and placed on the consent calendar, referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate Joint Resolutions congratulatory memorializing.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With all Senate joint resolutions congratulatory memorializing and allowing that has to be placed on the consent calendar pursuant to Rule number 17.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Resolutions lying over.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With all resolutions lying over, be referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction of bills.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that House Bills 2,994 through 2,997 be introduced and passed on first consideration.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate bills on first consideration.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that Senate Bills 78, 1,943, 1,979, 1,994, 2023, 2043, 2055, 2083, 2133, 2162, 2202, 2262, 2284, 2325, 2356, 2366, 2391, 2432, 2478, 2577, 2648, 2655, 2664, 2665, 2,778, 2,826, 2,896, and 2,939 transmitted by the Senate be held on the desk placing pending third consideration of their companion House bills.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate bills on second consideration. House bills on second consideration.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That House bills or House Bill 2,993 be passed on second consideration to be held on the desk referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Petitions and memorials, reports from standing committees, reports from select committees, calendars. Mr. Speaker, the House has a consent calendar.
Chairman Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It be passed to the consent calendar on third and final consideration, keeping with Rule 50.
Gentleman moves past the consent calendar, probably second. Mr. Clerk, any objections been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no objections filed.
Anyone seeking recognition on the consent calendar? Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have to confirm with the leader and the delegation, Shelby County Delegation Chair. I ask all those all those voted in affirmative be added as co-prime sponsor for Pat Halloran, who is the former manager of the Orpheum in Memphis, be added as co-prime sponsors with the Shelby delegation listed first.
Which resolution?
Item 19.
Item 19. Without objection, exclusion is duly noted. Anyone else seeking recognition on the consent calendar? Seeing none, we're voting on the consent calendar. All those members in favor vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 93, no nays.
Having received a constitutional majority, I declare the consent calendar passed without objection. Most reconsider table. Call up next order, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the House has a regular calendar.
Leader Lamberth, for what purpose?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I make a motion to take up House Bill 2124, which is item number 21 on the calendar at this time.
Without objection, any objection? Representative Pearson.
Speaker, I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I'm on the list to speak on this bill.
Well, we're not there yet. We got to take it up. Is there objection to taking it up first?
No, go ahead.
Seeing none. So ordered. Mr. Clerk, call up first bill.
Item 21, House Bill 2124 by Chairman Grills and others relative to communication with federal officials regarding immigration status.
Representative Grills, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage for House Bill 2124 on third and final consideration.
Representative Grills moves passage. Probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Grills, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the past few weeks, criminal illegal aliens have murdered a nursing student in Georgia, murdered a 2-year-old in Maryland, murdered a 16-year-old in Texas, sexually assaulted a child in Virginia, raped a 14-year-old at knife point in Louisiana, stabbed another man repeatedly in Louisiana. Just this past weekend, the West Tennessee Drug Task Force confiscated 85 pounds of fentanyl on I-40 from an illegal alien. That's enough fentanyl to kill 19 million people. This legislation requires that law enforcement officers in the state communicate with the Department of Homeland Security when they encounter a person in the country illegally. And with that, I renew my motion, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Grill renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Pearson, you're recognized.
Thank you so much, Speaker. Obviously, and this came through our committee, I believe this type of legislation is detrimental. I think it is harmful. I think it is rooted in racism and xenophobia that only creates more problems, and turning that into legislation is not something that we should be doing. I asked you about this in committee and just wanted to see if you learned any more information about the 287G program and how this legislation, which would force local law enforcement to engage with the federal government, how that would actually happen without there being a memorandum of agreement or understanding with those agencies.
Representative Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just communicating with the Department of Homeland Security is not that. So it would not affect the 287G program.
Representative Pearson.
Thank you. So here's the problem. The effort that you are making is to turn local law enforcement into federal officials, to federal law enforcement. It's the federal government's job to deal with immigration. It is not the job of our police departments. It is not the job of our sheriffs. They've got enough problems to deal with. And you mentioned a whole lot of things that you say people who are immigrants committed acts of, but there have been 74 mass shootings in the United States of America, nearly one for every single day. Most violence that is actually committed is committed by citizens. Non-citizens commit 30% less crime than citizens. And so this hyperbole, this political rhetoric is nothing but something to fuel and stoke the fires of xenophobia, to fuel and stoke the fires of separation, and that is wrong and immoral. The 287G program has two models, a jail enforcement model, a warrant service officer model. And to participate, jurisdictions sign a memorandum of agreement with ICE, state and local law enforcement officers participating in the 287G program have all of these qualifications that they must do. But by doing so, they are then able to communicate the things that you are articulating to the federal government. Absent this, I do not see how this would even be possible to be implemented. And the reality is, in Davidson County, this was tried and they stopped doing. In Knox County, this was tried and they ended up being in court about it. There is no way that we can actually force local law enforcement to increase the amount of work that they are doing without one of these agreements being in place. And so your legislation ignores the reality of implementation, which is why it is a very weak piece of legislation that needs more time if it were ever to be considered. This type of legislation is dangerous. This is dangerous. When you have people who march in Nashville and in Tennessee advocating against immigrants and saying people who are Mexican need to be deported, and then we have racist legislation that we seek to pass that helps to support these very negative ideologies, this is wrong. This is not how you address a crisis. This is not how you are intentional or pay attention to how we solve something. This continues what I have unfortunately seen in too many resolutions and too many bills that have been passed and that have sought to be passed. This continues a very false sense of security. This isn't going to do anything to meaningfully address the reality of immigrants who are seeking asylum, people who are fleeing all of the places that they are fleeing because they are seeking what many people here seem to care about, or at least talk about, the American dream. But the American dream seems to only matter if you look a particular way. The American dream only seems to matter if you come from a particular place. But if you're fleeing countries due to violence, if you're fleeing places due to humanitarian issues, we are turning our back on those individuals. And that is immoral and wrong. It is not to discount the realities. And some of the stats that you mentioned may be true. But if we only legislate and advocate for legislation because of these very extreme examples, and we do not recognize the beauty that exists within the people who come to our borders, the people who are on our shores seeking a better life, we will injure ourselves, we will injure our communities, we will injure the people who do help to make America the country that it is and can be. And so instead of false solutions, xenophobic solutions, let us be intentional about real solutions to include real solutions to make people human and treat them with dignity and respect. That is not what this legislation does. And that's why I ask that you all oppose it.
Representative Grills, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm going to surprise some of you here because I actually agree with President Biden on an issue. 2 weeks ago, on February 28th, the White House spokesperson stated, "We welcome local law enforcement support and cooperation in apprehending and removing individuals who pose a national security risk and public safety when a local jurisdiction has information about an individual who could pose a threat to public safety. We want them to share that information with ICE." I agree with Joe Biden on that issue.
Representative Jones, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This past weekend, I joined faith leaders and went to the border. I went to McAllen and Brownsville and crossed the border into Reynosa, Mexico. I hear a lot of my colleagues often say that every state is a border state and every community is a border community. What I witnessed on the border was an organization called Team Brownsville, a group of grandmothers giving immigrants food and hygiene supplies and clothing. So when you say that all communities are border communities, I say, why are we not more like Brownsville? We can build a beloved community and welcome our migrant neighbors. At the border, we witness no invasion. We witness communities intertwined, people moving across the border for work, to visit family, to shop. We witness a border state and community that was two parts of one whole. The politics of division and xenophobic hatred is not about protecting American citizens. It's about creating racist fears of migrants that feed the red meat of racism to those who commit atrocities like the El Paso shooting or the Nashville hate crimes, or the shooting of a Latino rancher in Texas by his white neighbor, or Nazis marching through the streets of Nashville chanting, "Save the white men, deport every Mexican." These anti-immigrant laws are just a bullhorn signal by my colleagues here to give de facto permission for vigilante violence against these migrant communities, our beloved community. And so when we talk about immigrants, we fail to mention how exploited immigrant labor fuels the company's profits by my Republican colleagues that they love to protect. Exploited immigrant labor is the backbone of the U.S. economy on both sides of the border, from the maquiladora floor to the American farm. My Republican colleagues talk on both sides, out of both sides of their mouth with hypocrisy, because they are more than willing to let companies exploit and profit from immigrants and then deport them when it's politically convenient. It's morally bankrupt policy of exploitation that we should be ashamed of and should be addressing. To Representative Grills, when you pass laws like this, you're making it harder for immigrants to report crimes that happen to them. Immigrants are far more likely to be victims of crimes like wage theft, labor exploitation, housing discrimination, and petty theft, and yet laws like this would protect their exploiters and deny them justice. Turning the local police into immigration authority erodes public trust in the police department and make it harder to gain important information and conduct investigations. Undocumented migrants are vital members of our communities who seek to uphold community well-being. And I just want to say from the heart, because I really went with an open mind to the border this weekend, and I met with students and I met with families, people who are fleeing political violence, people who are really desperate to have a better life. I met people who came all the way from Haiti, fleeing exploitation. And I just hope there's nothing that I can say that will change our minds about this. We see the folks standing up here, standing lock in step with attacking brown people. I know how this goes. But what I just want to say to you all is that
Representative Jones, that comment is close to being borderline disparaging members who are standing in the well. I would ask you to refrain from doing that. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll refrain. I'm just appealing to my colleagues here. Let's go to the border together and let's go meet some of these folks. Let's meet people like Javier, who walked through the Darien Gap coming from Venezuela, who I walked with across the border, and who was a local government official who was calling out corruption in his government and is now fleeing for his lives. Let's meet people like Rosa, who took her family from El Salvador with everything that they had, trying to do what any parent would do and seek a better life for her family, fleeing violence. Representative Grills, we serve on Agriculture Committee together. Come with me to the border. Let's go for Holy Week, April, and let's go meet with people on the border. For God's sake, let us stop demonizing human beings. Let's stop using the term illegal, because when all of your ancestors came here, they were not called illegal. When they crossed over at Ellis Island or wherever they came from, they weren't called illegal. Have that same mercy and grace for these folks simply seeking a better life. I mean, what I saw was something I cannot unsee. And laws like this do nothing to protect American interests. Laws like this do nothing to make our communities safer. I know some people are afraid that America is changing, it's becoming more diverse, but we can be a beloved community together. We don't have to be afraid that America is becoming more black and brown. Let's build a beloved community together and not pass laws that incite fear against each other. There's another bill coming up that wants to make a Christian Heritage Day. There's something in our faith that says, remember that you are to welcome the foreigner and the stranger, because you were once foreigners and strangers in the land of Egypt. So when you get ready to pass your bill to have a Christian Heritage Day, let's remember that we were once immigrants to this nation. Let's remember that we too come from somewhere else and that God requires better of us to welcome our brothers and sisters.
Representative Grills.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't know exactly what the question was there, but there were several statements made talking about people and how they've been affected by it. And if you would indulge me, Representative Carringer has some friends here who have been affected by illegal immigration. And if it'd be okay with you, I'd like for her to tell her story and introduce her friends.
Representative Carringer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Speaker. Before I begin, I want to personally thank all of our firefighters from Memphis, Tennessee to Knoxville, Tennessee, for safely connecting a chain from Memphis to Knoxville. to bring home Captain DJ Corcoran, who was with our Knoxville Fire Department, who was working a side job in Memphis, Tennessee. And they made a chain from Memphis to Knoxville to bring DJ Corcoran home on December the 29th, 2018, when Wendy and DJ Corcoran's son, 22-year-old Pierce Kennedy Corcoran, was driving with his girlfriend to buy a vacuum. He wasn't in the wrong part of town. He wasn't doing anything that he shouldn't be doing. Matter of fact, he was doing something that any one of us might be doing on any day of the week. In other words, he was simply living life. An immigrant from Mexico who had been unlawfully living in our country for 14 years, traveling in the opposite direction, crossed the double yellow line, hitting Pierce head on and killing him. This man rendered no aid, never left his vehicle, and witnesses reported he was trying to start his vehicle to leave the scene. Knox County Sheriff's Office recognizes and enforces 287G, a program which allows arresting officers to detain law violators for ICE agents. House Bill 2124 before us will mimic 287G, requiring law enforcement to hold flight risk criminals until the legal process can properly take its course. We always hear that illegal immigrants commit less crimes than the native born. While not true, it is irrelevant. Pierce's death and all others killed by people illegally in the U.S. are preventable if our immigration laws are enforced. So, with that, I want you to think about it for a few minutes. I want you to think about if your son or daughter or family member or a good friend and someone does not even get out of their vehicle and render aid to you or your friend or loved one. And all we're saying is let the law officers do their job in protecting all of us when those who are out there doing unlawful things in our state, and let the law take over and do what is correct. Thank you, Chairman Grills, for allowing me to be able to share this morning.
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do appreciate you bringing this legislation to us. We hear our communities. They're crying out to us. Every single one of you in this room knows this. You hear this every day. Our communities are hurting. We see our National Guard members going off to Texas to try to protect our border and protect our citizens in this state, leaving their families behind for months at a time to stand in the stead for us. We see the tremendous cost that this illegal immigration situation is bearing on our communities, at least in our education system and our healthcare system. Overwhelmed. Many places are overwhelmed. It's costing us hundreds of millions of dollars a year. We see the disrespect for the law that the Biden administration has in this country and how they are absolutely skirting their responsibilities to protect our border, to protect these.
Hang on, Representative Todd. Representative Jones, what's your point of order?
Point of order.
You can come up to the front. You got to come up to the front. Point of order is to the front. All right. Representative Jones, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a point of order for Representative Todd for saying that the President of the United States has no respect for lawlessness and law and order and disparaging the president. We would not allow that kind of commentary about any of our colleagues. It would be ruled out of order, and I hope that the same can be said, and the same respect can be showed for another elected official. Thank you.
Well, you're just making a statement?
That's a point of order for Rule 19.
All right. Rule 19. All right. Representative, does anybody object to the point of order? We object. We're on the board. All those in favor? So a yes vote is he will continue to proceed under his allotment of time. A no vote is he will not proceed under his allotment of time. All those in favor? Mr. Clerk? Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Speaker, Representative Todd was recognized. He has about 4 minutes left. Representative Jones has called Representative Todd to order pursuant to Rule 19. The body is now voting on whether or not Representative Todd shall proceed.
A yes vote is to proceed. A no vote is to not proceed. There we go. We are voting. Raper, aye. Rudder, aye. Moody, aye. Hurt, aye. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Aye, 73, 20 nays.
Representative Todd will continue. Representative Todd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as I was saying before I was interrupted with this unnecessary time delay and stall tactic, in my own community just weeks ago, my local law enforcement, the brave men and women of the Jackson Police Department, had a shootout with an illegal immigrant. Didn't make the news. Our locals didn't pick it up. Nobody else picked it up, but it happened. This is going on all over our country. We could stand here for hours on end listing the crimes, the devastation in our communities brought by folks that are here illegally. We welcome immigrants to this country. All of us are immigrants in this country. Every single person in this state is an immigrant to this country and their ancestry. We respect that. We respect the rule of law. President Biden's administration has delivered this pain to our doorsteps. We all know that and recognize that. And it's time to do something about it. Our citizens are demanding that we do something. As I said a moment ago, we've sent our men and women off to Texas to try to protect our border and protect this country, protect our state from this plight. And I encourage each member to vote for this bill to support our communities, to do what they're asking us to do, to everything in our power on the state level to uphold the rule of law and defend our communities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would just like to recognize the fact that there's 151 illegal migrants on the National Terrorism Watch List that have been countered by Border Protection agents last year. 151 that are on the terrorist watch list. We have a problem in this country, and they're coming across the border. We have to do everything we can to protect our citizens. I am proud to associate myself with these men and women up here, and I consider the party that I serve with the party of law and order. And I appreciate the stand that you continue to take.
Representative Clemens.
Mr. Speaker, objection to the comments made with regards to that. We all took the same oath up here to the same law and order, so I'd object to his statements. I'd ask him to retract that statement.
Representative Grills, that's please stay on the bill. Thank you. You're recognized, Representative Grills.
I will retract that statement, Mr. Speaker.
There you go. All right. You have Leader Lambert, parliamentary inquiry. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the parliamentary inquiry is if a member is called to order under Rule 19 and decides to quit speaking and yield the rest of their time, does the body vote? And the answer is no. If a member agrees to come to order, then there is no vote, and we go to the next person on the list.
Representative Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chairman Grills, thank you for bringing this bill. It's important to remember we find ourselves in this position as states where we have to take these steps because of the failure of the Biden administration, and just the numbers prove it. Under President Biden, in 3.5 years, 8.9 million illegal aliens have crossed the border, compared to 4 years under President Trump, where it was just over 3 million. And so I've heard the words dangerous and racist and all these other words to describe this piece of legislation used. And actually, I would say just the opposite. This is extremely important to the protection of Tennesseans. All we can do here is protect Tennesseans. And every step we take is a necessary step to protect Tennesseans because of the failure of the Biden administration, allowing the open borders to continue, allowing 130,000 Chinese nationals since October to cross the border near San Diego, allowing 19 people on the terrorist watch list to cross the border just since December. That's more than all of 2021. So every step we take is a necessary step to protect our country and to protect Tennesseans. And Chairman Grills, you had mentioned something related to fentanyl. I think it's important to remember that during testimony last year in the Finance Committee, Director Roush, TBI Director Roush, said that the fentanyl scourge on the United States and Tennessee was a direct result of the production of fentanyl in China coming over here and crossing the southern border. And according to the NIH, in the last 5 years, fentanyl overdose deaths have doubled. It's now the #1 killer for those 18 to 42. So the open borders has so many consequences on the people of our country, but one of those primarily is being the overdose deaths that are being perpetrated by the Chinese over the border into our country. So thank you for bringing the bill. Thank you for supporting law enforcement. And thank you for equipping them to be able to do what is necessary when the federal government continues to fail us over and over again.
Representative Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chairman Zachary, for those comments. And I want to get back to the basics of the bill and the focus on the bill here. Mayor Eric Adams has publicly endorsed and pledged with his city council to implement something very similar to this bill after his sanctuary city has dealt with the increase in crime from illegal aliens, including the attack by 7 illegal aliens on New York police officers. New York City Mayor Eric Adams wants expanded cooperation between local police and federal immigration authorities, and that's exactly what this bill does. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Fritz, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to the representative bringing this bill, I appreciate you doing this. I think we need to refocus on our oath. Our oath is to our Constitution, to the people of Tennessee, and to the people of these United States, not the world. We have no obligation under our oath to defend the peoples of the entire world. As a matter of fact, Representative, I suspect that we will honor later today that greatest generation that stormed the beaches, Americans who were fighting those Nazis who had invaded other lands. And so our oath, and I thank you for bringing this, is to the Tennesseans. It is not to travel to foreign camps and seek the publicity of those who hate this country. The oath that we are asked, that we are commanded, that we must upkeep is to the people of this state. And those people, the least of us Tennesseans, will be the one that bear the cost of these irresponsible policies and these leftist ideals. These leftist ideals encourage an open border that allows human trafficking, which many of us have seen with our own eyes, the pathways that come across the Rio Grande, where human beings are forced to swim by their owners, the cartels, to bring drugs into this nation. Many of us have seen the fences on the water supplies on the Rio Grande that must have been installed to prevent the human bodies from stopping up that water supply in McAllen, Texas. So, Mr. Sponsor, we are commanded as believers, as Christians, as our Constitution affirms, God Almighty, capital G, capital A, to be kind to the stranger and sojourner. But we are not commanded to invite the invader. We have no commandment to do that. So I stand with you today for the Constitution over these hyperbolic words of danger and fear that the left may try to use against us today. I stand with you today for the lawful requirement that we are bound to uphold in this great state of Tennessee to protect those citizens that voted for us to come here. Not to defend the rights of those peoples from every other continent on the world. We face this day, and I'll close with this, Mr. Sponsor, with my full support of your bill, that due to this lawless border policy that the federal government has allowed to take place, we Tennesseans, by our oath, by our Constitution, both U.S. and Tennessee, and the 10th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America, are duty-bound to protect Tennesseans against what is an economic invasion. It's unsustainable. Against what is an electoral planned invasion in many states, and against what is an existential threat to, again, the least of these, our neighbors, our friends, the folks that sent us here. So I commend you for your courage. I stand with you. And we will today show the rest of this nation and the world that Tennessee will not tolerate this. So thank you, Mr. Sponsor.
Representative Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Fritz. I believe every one of us up here and that are supporting this bill want to see people come to America. We want to see them come to America through a wide gate, but with tall fences, the right way, the legal way. And with that, I renew my motion.
Representative Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move previous question.
Previous question called. There's objection. We're voting on previous question. All those in favor of previous question, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Aye, 72, 23 nays.
Previous question prevails. We are voting. All those in favor of House Bill 2124, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Aye, 74, 22 nays.
House Bill 2124 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The most reconsidered table. Call next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that brings the body to item one. Item one on today's regular calendar, House Bill 1610 by Representative Jernigan relative to licensure requirements for massage therapy.
Representative Jernigan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 1610 on third and final consideration.
Representative Jernigan moves passage. This probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
It's fine. Representative Jernigan, you're recognized.
Thank you, members. This bill was brought to me by the Tennessee Massage Therapy Association. It will raise the number of curriculum hours from eligibility to license for massage therapy, body work, and somatic therapy from 500 to 650 hours. The reason for the request is due to a recent federal rule change in the Department of Education that will go into effect in July. This rule change will result in students losing their federal financial aid opportunities and in turn, severe impact on current school enrollment. That's why we're raising the hours. So, Speaker, I'm happy to answer any questions, including details of the rule change.
Representative Jernigan renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Sapicki, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, members, I know I'm out of order, but we have a youth leadership from Murray County. If you could just welcome them to the General Assembly, we'd really appreciate it.
Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, we are voting. All those in favor of House Bill 1610, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 88, 1 nay, 3 present, not voting.
House Bill 1610, having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion reconsiders table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1950 by Chairman Clemens and others relative to days of special observance. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Clemens, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1860.
Chairman Clemens moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 1860 without objection. So ordered. Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1860 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Clemens moves passage of Senate Bill 1860 on third and final consideration. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Clemens, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd just like to invite all the members of the Veterans Caucus who want to join us up here in the well to join us if you would like. This is a really, I think, important and overdue piece of legislation. I'm proud to be joined by my good friend and lead co-sponsor, Representative Sam Whitson here, who ably served our country, as did many of these other gentlemen. This legislation seeks to honor and designate June 6th of every year as D-Day Remembrance Day in the state of Tennessee. This is like I said, an overdue recognition. This will be the 80th anniversary of the largest seaborne invasion in history. Obviously, a lot of Tennesseans were involved in this. A lot of courageous young men and women took part in this. Every time I read about D-Day and I studied D-Day, as many of you have, it is never lost on me the courage it must have taken to get off those landing craft on that morning and face what was on the hillsides of the cliffs and the beaches that faced those young men and women. It would be remiss to say that there wasn't a large contribution from the people who were stateside. Not only in our country, but other countries who took part in that invasion, with the technological advances, the research, the manufacturing, the rations that every family took part in across our country. It was truly a national effort and an international effort, and one that is very, very deserving of our recognition as a state. This will not be an official state federal holiday, to the point where people are let off work, but it is something that will allow us to ably recognize these. And as I said, Mr. Speaker, I'm honored to be joined by my good friend, Representative Sam Whitson, and I would ask that he be recognized at this time.
Representative Whitson.
Thank you, and thank you, my colleague, John Ray, for bringing this. A little bit of history real quick. On June 6th, the 1st Infantry Division landed at Omaha Beach. They suffered severe and high casualty rate, but we have a colleague that served in the 1st Infantry Division in combat, and it's my friend, Representative Monty Fritz. And also, I was blessed to have served 3 years in U.S. 7th Corps and then another 5 years in the 4th Infantry Division. They landed at Utah Beach. They actually landed at the wrong beach and did not suffer that great of casualties. But their assistant division commander was Teddy Roosevelt Jr., the son of U.S. President Teddy Roosevelt. And Teddy Roosevelt Jr. was awarded the Medal of Honor for his service being the first general officer to land on occupied France. And Teddy Roosevelt Jr. unfortunately passed away about a month later due to a medical condition. But with that, this is a great opportunity to recognize those brave Americans, and also with our British Canadian allies that liberated Europe from the Nazis. And I'm just so proud to be standing up here with my fellow veterans. Thank you, Representative Clement. Leader Clemens.
Thank you, Representative Whitson, and to all the brave men and women who served our country. And I would like to point out that, of course, the 101st Airborne landed on Utah Beach that morning. And so I want to recognize them. I'm proud to wear a pin honoring the 101st Airborne, the Screaming Eagles, this morning. And with that, and on behalf of all of us, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Clemens renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative McCalman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sponsor, again, thank you for bringing this bill. I know I mentioned in committee that I had family that was on the beaches on D-Day, so this is incredible. I actually let them know after we passed through committee that we were doing this here in the state of Tennessee, and they were ecstatic about it. So again, thank you for honoring what truly was the greatest generation in our country, and I think this is a fabulous bill, so thank you.
Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Chairman Clemens, thank you for bringing this resolution. William Roscoe Lambert Jr., my namesake and my grandfather, y'all have heard me speak of him on the floor before. He passed a couple of years ago. And the reason I bring him up today is he didn't go in D-Day. He went in the mop-up operations afterwards in the European theater. He and his friends and neighbors, were being trained to go into the Big Island afterwards, obviously something that was not necessary. But we're losing this greatest generation every single day. If you have a World War II veteran in your community, members, please find those folks, meet with those folks, visit with them, listen to their stories. When they're gone, they're gone. All we have are memories and pictures. But they are phenomenal in their service. And if they are gone, or even if they are not, meet their spouses, talk to their children. These families gave so much as well. And literally the freedoms we have been bought with the blood of teenagers, kids, young people in their teens and early 20s most of the time, who charged into machine gun nests just to try to preserve freedom here. It's just on days like today's and bills like this, it makes me think of my grandfather. It makes many of y'all think of your loved ones. But let's remember those few that we have left of the greatest generation. Meet them, listen to them, learn from them, and just remember them on days like this. So Chairman Clemens, thank you, and thank you for all that are standing with him today. It's such a good idea. I think most of us wish we thought of it first, so well done.
Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And of course, this great idea was brought to me by someone I have the honor of representing. Like many of us, this legislation was brought to me by a constituent. So I thank them for that. And like you, one of the most influential people in my life was my grandfather, who fought in World War II. And I'm sure that's the case with many of us, fathers or grandfathers. So I appreciate your comments.
Representative Capley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sponsor, thank you for this piece of legislation. My grandfather served in World War II. Members, I always want to take an opportunity to honor my dad. I'm an Army brat, and he did 28 years in the 101st Airborne, 82nd Airborne, 7 tours of combat. So he never talks about it, so I try to talk about it for him. And good bill, sponsor. Thank you.
Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask that Leader Camper be recognized.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and members, I'm honored to stand here today as we reflect in history right now on, as some of my colleagues have already said, we stood together united during that time. And many of us in this room, probably all of us, has either had a family member or someone we know who served, and some of them gave their life. Everyone in this room and many of the people watching can look back and reflect in history on a grandfather, on a great-grandfather who served, who gave their life for this country. So I'm honored to stand here with my colleagues as we pass this bill, honoring this day. And I hope that on that day, wherever we are, we take a moment in time to reflect on that and to reflect on every Tennessean that gave their life every Tennessean that went forward to fight to preserve our rights, our freedoms, and to help others in the world to do the same. So thank you, sponsor, for bringing this bill. You see here today, you have a lot of people standing with you, and it's a time for us to come together as a body to recognize the contributions so many made for us in this country and in this state. Thank you, Representative. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And for the members, I would like for you to, if you have a World War II veteran in your district, in your home, please contact my office. This body last year appropriated $50,000 for the Forever Young Veterans group out of Collierville, the District of Champions. And what they do is they have, for years, this charity has been taking World War II veterans back to Normandy and back to Pearl Harbor. This state appropriated money for it last year. The problem is these veterans, we're losing them daily. So we're running, the population that they can serve is dwindling, and soon we're not going to have veterans from that era. So if you have someone in your district, please let my office know so that then we can contact Forever Young and put them in touch with each other. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks for the bill.
Representative Sparks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chairman Clements, I'd argue this is the best piece of legislation you've ever carried up here. And a bipartisan. But I just, many of us had fathers and uncles, and, I just want to give a shout out to Major Walls that was at Pearl Harbor, who started the Omni Hut. Many people knew about the Omni Hut restaurant in Smyrna, started the Smyrna Country Club. I consider man a mentor. And my late father, who flew on the B-17s, I was told my dad was the meanest man in Smyrna by a councilman who knew him. But that generation really was the greatest generation. And I think, to be honest, I think they'd be disappointed in our generation. But I think they'd be very proud of you, Clemens, and everybody standing with you, because we've got to get back to those basics. I didn't get to speak on the immigration bill earlier. I wanted to. He met my mom in England. My mom was an immigrant. She loved this country. She never wanted to go back to Great Britain. She wanted to stay right here. Thank you for this bipartisan piece of legislation, sir.
Chairman Clements.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think before we wrap up here, I just want to say once again, thank you to everyone who served our country in this capacity, all the individuals standing up here with me. I obviously did not serve, but I'm forever grateful for those who do and have served our country in the armed forces. So with that, I'll renew my motion.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, we are voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1860, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 94, no nays.
Senate Bill 1860, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion reads here is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2262 by Representative Darby relative to program for persons with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, Senate bills on the desk.
Representative Darby, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to SB 2920.
Representative Darby moves to substitute and form Senate Bill 2920 without objection. So ordered. Representative Darby, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of SB 2920 on third and final consideration.
Representative Darby moves passage of Senate Bill 2920 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Darby, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under current law, blind vendors are entitled to a statutory preference in the operations of vending facilities on most public property in Tennessee. You're probably familiar with the program, which is commonly known as the Blind Vendors Program. Under this program, which dates back to 1949, the Department of Human Services has the right of first refusal and exclusive right to the operation to any and all vending facilities on public property that determines are capable of being operated by a blind individual that it licenses. House Bill 2262 would not alter anything about the structure of this program. And let me repeat that. House Bill 2262 would not alter anything about the structure of this program. It simply requires the contracts for the software utilized by inmate commissary facilities to be competitively bid. The current contract costs the state close to $2.5 million, and it is a sole source contract that has never been competitively bid, nor is it subject to oversight by the Fiscal Review Committee. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Representative Darby renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, let the journal reflect Representative McKenzie and Harris are excused. We are voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2920, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does anyone wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, one nay.
Senate Bill 2920 and received a constitutional majority. I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2263 by Representative Darby and others relative to wildlife.
Representative Darby, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2263 on third and final consideration.
Representative Darby moves to substitute. Nope. House bill. Sorry. Representative Darby moves passage following second. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House State Government Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Keisling, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Amendment 1, it does tweak the language, so we'll defer to the sponsor for an explanation. We move to adopt, Mr. Speaker.
Chairman Keisling moves adoption of Committee Amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of Committee Amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt it. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Darby, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2263 looks to proactively prevent issues hunters in other states are facing by stating clearly in Tennessee statute that hunting and fishing are conservation and are the preferred methods of wildlife management. By making these clarifications, this bill works to ensure that Tennesseans have the opportunity to hunt and fish for generations to come. Further, this bill will require that appointees to the Fish and Wildlife Commission be active participants in the activities regulated by the TWRA. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I stand for questions.
Representative Darby renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is simply, does an individual have to participate in hunting, angling, trapping, and boating, or any of the above?
Representative Darby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Any of the above.
Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right. Representative Jones.
Thank you. I was just trying to understand, because I didn't hear this bill, and I don't know if it came before Agriculture Committee, but I was just trying to understand, what is the necessity for this bill? Are we trying to say that hunting in itself is a conservation activity, or is it trying to get hunters to be more aligned with conservation efforts? That's what I'm trying to understand.
And Darby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It says a little bit of both, that a lot of other states are being challenged. A ballot initiative has been put on in Oregon trying to outlaw hunting and fishing and trapping. And this is just to ensure that as a state, we've got this in statute for future generations.
Representative Jones.
Is there anything in this legislation or anything from your position that would make sure that we have responsible, hunting and fishing to make sure that it is sustainable when we look at species in our communities that are at risk or threatened? Is there anything that will require the protection of these things, or at least acknowledges that as well?
Representative Darby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, sir. This right here will put requirements on all the TWRA commissioners from here on that they are actively involved, that they do have knowledge of the conservation of hunting, trapping, and fishing.
Representative Jones.
And can you define what is, just so we can be under the same page of the intention of this bill, what is, as you understand it, what is the definition of a conservation?
Representative Darby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Conservation is any effort there to ensure that wildlife is going to be here for future generations. And it's a scientific fact that hunting and fishing it's a cycle there, and they help keep everything in the right numbers there for our future generations.
Representative Jones.
Thank you. And I agree. I'm not against hunting or fishing, but we just want responsible, hunting and fishing. The TWRA, one of these boards, just made a rule change to allow hunting of sandhill cranes a few years ago. And there's been some concerns by conservationists that this is impacting other species that migrate with sandhill cranes, like the whooping crane, which is critically endangered. And so again, we just want to balance conservation efforts so that our children and grandchildren can have access to these species with the hunting. That's the only thing I want to ensure in this legislation.
Representative Darby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And hey, great question. And that's the reason why that there is a season on sandhill cranes, because their numbers years ago, they were endangered. Their numbers have come up, and they use the same migration paths. They use the same breeding grounds. And so to keep the sandhill crane numbers in check, where you do have a viable population of the whooping cranes and everything else that uses those breeding grounds, that's the reason why this legislation will ensure that everything stays in the cycle.
Representative Jones.
Thank you.
Representative Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move previous question.
Previous question been called. Any objection? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of House Bill 2263 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Dogged eye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays, one present, not voting.
House Bill 2263 having received a constitutional majority, everybody declare passed without objection. Most read serious table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2293 by Representative Davis.
Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I make a motion to send this to the next available space on the next available calendar.
Without objection, so ordered. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2900 by Chairman Kumar, relative to occupational licensing.
Chairman Kumar, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request that this be moved to next Thursday's available spot on the calendar.
Chairman Kumar.
I stand corrected. It will be the next available calendar on the next available spots.
Very well. Without objection, so ordered. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2901 by Chairman Kumar, relative to mental health services.
Chairman Kumar, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2901 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Kumar moves passes. Following second. Mr. Clerk, any amendment's been filed.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Kumar, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, present law allows detention of a person who has a known mental health condition and are in acute distress, and there is immediate danger to harm to themselves or to the public. Under that situation, they can be detained for mental health evaluation and treatment. This legislation changes the word immediate danger to imminent danger to allow first responders, mental health professionals, and law enforcement more time to handle these critical situations. Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Kumar renews his motion. Any discussion? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. We're voting. All those in favor of House Bill 2901, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 77, 6 nays, 4 present, not voting.
House Bill 2901, having received constitutional majority, everybody declare passed without objection. The most read serious table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1920 by Leader Lamberth, relative to misdemeanor sentences.
Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move passage of House Bill 1920 on third and final consideration.
Leader Lamberth moves passage. Following second. Mr. Clerk, any amendment's been filed.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill just gives a misdemeanor sentencing. It gives our judges full discretion to determine the sentencing percentage for release eligibility. With that, I renew my motion.
Leader Lamberth renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of House Bill 1920 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Leatherwood, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 78, 11 nays.
House Bill 1920, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. Most reconsidered table. Representative Littleton, for what purpose?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know I'm out of order, but I would like for everyone to welcome Emmy Kate Gosner. She's from Burns and is a sixth grader at Nashville Christian School, and she is a national champion softball player, winning the PGF Nationals in California this summer. So let's all welcome her.
Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1751 by Chairman Reagan, relative to the Department of Children's Services. Mr. Speaker, Senate bills on the desk.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1608.
Chairman Reagan moves substitute and form Senate Bill 1608 without objection. So ordered. Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1608 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Reagan moves passage of Senate Bill 1608 on third and final consideration. Second, Mr. Clerk, call for First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill extends the Department of Children's Services to 2026 and requires the department to continue to submit quarterly written reports to government operations committees of the House and Senate through 2024 to update the committee on the findings of their most recent audit report. With that explanation, I renew my motion.
Chairman Reagan renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Reedy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chairman Reagan, tell us again in this public forum why we just extended them until 2026. I know we discussed this in the joint subcommittee quite a bit, and then when it came to our committee in the House, we had a deep discussion on it again. And of course, that's where what you just read is showing that we're doing our due diligence to make sure we get these folks back in line. But please explain that if you would, sir.
Representative Reagan.
Thank you, sir, for that question. The Department of Children's Service underwent an audit in December of 2022, and the audit found a large number of findings. In fact, I believe the number is 13 to 15, somewhere in that category, which it came close to getting a record. Since that time frame, the commissioner has changed out, and they have made great progress in correcting those findings. That said, they still have a long way to go, which is why we are requiring them to report back to us on a quarterly basis. Does that answer your question, sir?
Representative Reedy. Perfect. Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1608 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 89, 2 nays.
Senate Bill 1608 having received a constitutional majority, everybody declare it passed without objection. Most reconsidered table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1752 by Chairman Reagan, relative to the Department of Correction. Mr. Speaker, Senate bills on the desk.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1609.
Chairman Reagan moves substitute and form Senate Bill 1609 without objection. So ordered. Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill extends the Department of Corrections to 2027 and requires the department to continue to report back to the joint subcommittee by December 31st, 2024 to update the committee on the findings of their most recent audit report. With that explanation, I renew my motion.
Chairman Reagan renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1609 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 80, 11 nays.
Senate Bill 1609, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The most reconsidered table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1757 by Chairman Reagan relative to the Health Facilities Commission. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1614.
Chairman Reagan moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 1614 without objection. So ordered. Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1614 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Reagan moves passage of Senate Bill 1614 on third and final consideration. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill extends the Health Facilities Commission to 2026. With that explanation, I renew my motion.
Chairman Reagan renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1614, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91 nay.
Senate Bill 1614, I received a constitutional majority. I hereby declare passed without objection. Most reconsidered table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1767 by Chairman Reagan relative to the Sports Wagering Council. Mr. Speaker, Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1624.
Chairman Reagan moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 1624 without objection. So ordered. Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1624 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Reagan moves passage of Senate Bill 1624 on third and final consideration. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill extends the Sports Wagering Council to 2028. With that, I renew my motion, sir.
Chairman Reagan renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1624, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 86 nays, 5 present, not voting.
Senate Bill 1624, I received a constitutional majority. I hereby declare passed without objection. Most reconsidered table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1782 by Chairman Reagan relative to the Tennessee Monuments and Memorials Commission. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1639.
Chairman Reagan moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 1639 without objection. So ordered. Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1639 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Reagan moves passage of Senate Bill 1639 on third and final consideration. By second, Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill puts the Tennessee Monuments and Memorials Commission into the sunset cycle with a termination date of 2025. The original bill that was passed inadvertently left them out of a sunset cycle. The commission was created last year, so it already exists. This bill simply requires the commission to be periodically reviewed by Government Operations Committee and the General Assembly as a whole, and is the standard practice for state-created government entities. With that, I renew my motion, sir.
Chairman Reagan renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, we are voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1639, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 88, 2 nays, 2 present, not voting.
Senate Bill 1639, I received a constitutional majority. I hereby declare passed without objection. Most reconsidered table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2306 by Chairman Vaughn relative to self-insurance.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2306 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Vaughn moves passage. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Commerce Committee Amendment number 1.
Vice Chairman Bricken, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment rewrites the bill. Move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for a short explanation.
Vice Chairman Bricken moves adoption of Committee Amendment number 1. Probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of Committee Amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Commerce Committee Amendment number 2.
Vice Chairman Bricken, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to adopt.
Vice Chairman Bricken moves adoption of Committee Amendment number 2. Probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of Committee Amendment number 2 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion and look forward to providing you with a very lengthy, detailed explanation.
Chairman Vaughn renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Chairman Vaughn?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill as amended creates a workers' compensation self-insurance guarantee association for various entities in the state that self-insure their workers' compensation. And for that, after that, I'll stand for any questions anybody may have, sir.
Chairman Vaughn renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of House Bill 2306 as amended vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays.
House Bill 2306 having received a constitutional majority, hereby declare it passed without objection. The most read series table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 647 by Representative Baum relative to medical records.
Representative Baum, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 647 on third and final consideration.
Representative Baum moves passage. Following second, Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, House Health Committee Amendment number 1 was previously adopted. The House is ready for House Amendment 2 by Representative Hawk. Mr. Speaker, it's timely filed.
Representative Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, Amendment number 2 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Health Committee Amendment number 2 filed as House Amendment 3.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to adopt.
Chairman Terry moves adoption of Committee Amendment number 3. Probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of Committee Amendment number 3 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Baum, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, in Tennessee, patients and their representatives can literally be charged hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for their medical records. This is because in Tennessee code, we permit a charge of up to 50 cents per page. But many medical records are now electronic. They can be copied electronically. They can be emailed to the patient. Given that new technology, this bill would add a new section to Tennessee code establishing a new set of maximum charges for electronic medical records. It would set those charges at no more than $25 for the first 10 pages, 25 cents per page thereafter, up to a maximum charge of $90. I renew my motion.
Representative Baum renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of House Bill 647 as amended vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 90, no nays.
House Bill 647 has received a constitutional majority. I hereby declare passed without objection. The most read series table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2057 by Chairman Carr and others relative to reappraisal.
Chairman Carr, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I respectfully ask that HB 2057 be held on the desk.
Without objection, held on the desk. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2272 by Representative Slater, relative to education.
Representative Slater, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2272 on third and final consideration.
Representative Slater moves passage. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Slater, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill requires Tennessee Department of Education to submit guidance documents from the Federal Department of Education to the appropriate committee chairman in the General Assembly. And with that, I renew my motion.
Representative Slater renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Chairman Clemens, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Sponsor, for what purpose are we asking our State Department of Education to interpret the federal law differently or otherwise from the federal regulations?
Representative Slater.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for that question. This does not ask the Tennessee Department of Education to interpret the law. It simply requires that the Department of Education will send these guidance documents to the appropriate committees in the General Assembly.
Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So they're simply relaying the interpretations and the regulations from the federal government to us.
Representative Slater.
Yes, that is correct.
Chairman Clemens.
Thank you for that clarification.
Representative Pearson.
Thank you, Speaker. And could you explain what you mean when you say that our Department of Education is going to be, and I'm just reading here, shall submit interpretations and directives? What interpretations and directives, what for interpretations and directives are going to be coming from the Department of Education that our Department of Education is going to have to further interpret?
Representative Slater.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it's very usual for the federal Department of Education to send their interpretations and directives from the federal Department of Education to our Department of Education. I describe those as guidance documents, and that's very common. So all that we're requiring is that those guidance documents be sent to the appropriate committee chairman here in the General Assembly.
Representative Pearson.
Thank you. So just to clarify, our Department of Education receives guidance documents from the federal Department of Education to make sure that it's in line with all of the Civil Rights Act and all of these other things. You're saying that the guidelines that the federal government sends to the Department of Education need also be sent to these respective committees, not that the Tennessee Department of Education puts their own interpretation on what the guidelines is and then sends that to the committee. Is that correct?
Representative Slater.
That is partially correct. The interpretation and the directives, the interpretation of federal law is determined by the federal Department of Education. When they make those determinations, they send those guidance documents then to our Tennessee Department of Education. This bill simply requires our Tennessee Department of Education to send those interpretations and directives from the federal Department of Education onto the appropriate committee chairs in the General Assembly.
Representative Pearson.
Okay, I just want to make sure of this one thing just really clearly. The Tennessee Department of Education is not going to look at the interpretations of guidance from the federal Department of Education, alter them in any way before sending it to the respective committees.
Representative Slater.
I would certainly hope that our department would not do that. One of the reasons for us to require this is so we as policymakers, we can be sure that those interpretations and directives from the federal Department of Education are sent directly to us so that we can take a look at what the federal government is saying related to education policy.
Representative Pearson.
Gotcha. And the Department of Education will still be responsible for following the guidelines federally. This is just so that we will all be on the same page for what the federal guidelines are, correct?
Representative Slater.
This bill does not address or change in any way the responsibilities of the Tennessee Department of Education.
Representative Pearson.
Thank you so much, sponsor, for answering the questions. And with that clarity, I believe I'll be able to support this. I think it is so imperative that we do ensure alignment of information, but also that we make sure that our Department of Education is not being pushed or forced in any way to do something antithetical to what federal law is as it relates to protecting all of the rights of our students. So thank you so much.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 2272, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Faison, aye. Leatherwood, aye. Got it. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
House Bill 2272, having received the constitutional majority, everybody declare passed. Without objection, motion to reconsider. Second, we'll call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2303 by Chairman Carr relative to issuance of marriage licenses. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Carr, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2581.
Chairman Carr moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2581 without objection. So ordered. Chairman Carr, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2581 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Carr moves passage of Senate Bill 2581 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call the first amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Carr, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All this bill does, we had an old code for the people that were getting married. If you were in the ages of 17 to 18, you must have both your parents
to join in with the application to get married. We actually just took out the 18 because 18 is of legal status now. So therefore, it would just be anybody that's 17 would have to have both parents join in for the application for marriage. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I remove my motion.
Chairman Carter renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I got that. You were talking real fast. If you are 17, then your parents would have to be present. Is that what you said? But other than that, they would not. Is that what this bill is doing?
Chairman Carter.
Yes, sir, that is correct. If you're 17, you still have to have your parents join in on the application to get married. It used to say 17 and 18. We took the 18 out because it's of legal status now.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appreciate the clarification.
Representative Pearson.
Thank you so much. One question I had is related to sort of the middle section here. Should either individual be incarcerated, the inmate must not be made to appear, but shall submit a notarized statement containing the inmate's name, age, current address, and social security number. How does that process, do you know how that process currently works, and if our prisons notarize these documents?
Chairman Carter.
Probably acts just exactly like the law states there. You would have a notarized statement. I've never been entitled to that.
Representative Pearson.
Yeah, overall, I think it's a good bill, but did have a question about how sort of that part of the law in this bill works, and if that's something the state actually takes care of to ensure people get married who want to. Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2581, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member votes, the member wish to change their vote. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays, one present, unvoted.
Senate Bill 2581 and received a constitutional majority. I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion for consideration table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2281 by Chairman Hawk relative to insurance producers.
Chairman Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2281 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Hawk moves passage. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it first amendment.
House Insurance Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Kumar, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment makes the effective date to be July 1, 2024. Move to adopt.
Chairman Kumar moves adoption of committee amendment number 1. Properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of committee amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted the next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last year, we passed House Bill 608, which removed the pre-licensing course study for insurance producers. We inadvertently included the title insurance folks. This bill corrects what our title insurance folks desire to happen. And the amendment, as you heard described by Chairman Kumar, sets the enacting date as July 1. With this, I renew my motion, Speaker and members.
Chairman Hawk renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Pearson.
Thank you, Speaker. Looking at Section 3 here, sponsor, if the individual is applying for a title insurance line of authority, has completed a pre-licensing course of study that consists of a minimum of 30 hours of coursework for title insurance. Today, what is the requirement? And I was hearing you say this might be a reversion back to the way things were, but if you could just articulate, what's the requirement now to get title insurance licensure?
Chairman Hawk.
2 answers to that question. Previously, the requirement was 30 hours. Upon passage of the law, House Bill 608 we passed last year, we removed that 30 hours of study. The title insurance producers want that 30 hours of study back in. Technically, it's 0 now, and the title insurance producers want that back in to where it was a year ago.
Representative Pearson.
And did they articulate why they wanted to have that requirement back? I'm most curious about sort of the cost of paying for the classes and things like that.
Chairman Hawk.
That's the industry's desire.
Representative Pearson.
Thank you so much. Look, I definitely know how important it is for people to be trained and things like that. I'm concerned only about the gatekeeping that happens within some industries to try and prohibit people from being able to participate in it, but appreciate you answering the questions.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 2281 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, as any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays, one present, not voting.
House Bill 2281 having received a constitutional majority, hereby declare passed by objection. The motion reconsider is tabled. Representative Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A quick welcome to some of our folks who've just come in from Northeast Tennessee, one of our Mennonite schools standing up here to my left, your right. If you could please make them welcome.
Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2090 by Chairman Hicks and others relative to procurement.
Chairman Hicks, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2090 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Hicks moves passage following second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House State Government Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Kiesling, you are recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Speaker. This amendment does rewrite the bill. We'll defer to Chairman Hicks for further explanation. We move to adopt.
Chairman Kiesling moves adoption of Committee Amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of Committee Amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendment.
Chairman Hicks, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2090 improves the time it takes to procure goods and services by the state's chief procurement officer, as well as making changes to a procurement protest. Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Hicks renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Clemens, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, sponsor. Just for clarification, is this limiting the amount of information that's going to produce or expanding the amount of information?
Chairman Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It actually clarifies what procurement records can be viewed once the state announces an intent to award a contract. So it does say, actually, in the amendment, it actually says all the things that will be included in that procurement record.
Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Sponsor. So with those clarifications, does that increase the amount of documentation that's going to be released or increase the amount of I'm just unfamiliar with that.
Chairman Hicks.
Pretty much, Chairman, it is pretty much the same thing. It just clarifies that information. So it lays it out a little more clear, but it's pretty much the same information.
Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr.
Representative Pearson.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, sponsor. This came through our committee. It was sort of the last thing, so we had to move through it quickly, and I didn't get the chance to ask questions about it. The one concern that I really have with this bill is where the power ultimately is residing. So we obviously have a chief procurement officer. There's a protest committee, and if you go to Section 7 of your legislation, it's being amended, adding the language chief procurement officer or the before protest committee. And so it's making the decision can be solely done unilaterally as it relates to the chief procurement officer's decision, or you can have the protest committee's input on decision making. And my concern is you can have an individual, a chief procurement officer, who could be doing things completely antithetical to what might be the result of a protest committee decision. And giving more power to one individual is not something that I really can support. While I understand the changes in the provisions, I do think that we've got a responsibility by ensuring the integrity of all the decision making that we're having, particularly when it comes to where our tax dollars and resources are being spent, that is done most fairly, and putting a lot of decision making just into one person's hands with the budget size that we have, I do not think is the right idea. And so if you could speak to that, I would appreciate it. But right now, that's the hesitation I have with supporting your bill.
Chairman Hicks.
Thank you, Representative, for your comments. What I'll say about that, when it comes down to actually deciding a protest, it's actually between the CPO and the state agency, so the department head of that. What the committee actually does is just set the policies. But when it comes to actually fulfilling and actually looking at the protest, so it is the CPO, just as you said, but it's also that agency department head as well.
Representative Pearson.
Thank you. And I can go to this section because I think part of it was in determining whether or not the protest, as it were, from a particular corporation would be able to go forward or move forward, and that ultimately that decision would go instead of to the protest committee as it does now to the decision or discretion of the chief procurement officer. And so again, some pretty important decision making being put into the hands of one individual is still remains my concern. I appreciate you answering the question. Thank you, Speaker.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Sponsor, under Section 10 of the amendment, it talks about the protesting party must show clear and convincing evidence of the fact. Can you expound a little on that? Did we change that before? Was it preponderance of the evidence before, or what was it before and what are we changing it to? Can you discuss a little bit about why we are making that decision to do that?
Chairman Hicks.
So, Leader Camper, you're correct. It was preponderance, and now it is clear and convincing evidence. And this is done so it will actually improve the quality of the protest. Again, that will come before the CPO, and it will actually decrease the protest caseloads overall.
Leader Camper.
You're saying that by changing the definition to to clear and convincing, you are reducing the amount of protest coming before the procurement officer to make a decision on?
Chairman Hicks.
I would say frivolous protests. When you look at last year, just to put this in perspective, last year there were 628 protestable contracts that were put out, and of those 628, only 3 were actually protested. So this is not something that happens a lot. So to say that we're trying to do anything to cut that down, we're just not. There's not a whole lot of protests to start with. So I don't know if that clears up what you were asking, but.
Leader Camper.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, sponsor. I was just thinking that I think preponderance of the evidence is pretty hefty to some degree already to get to make it clear and convincing is even an additional burden to put upon someone to have to prove, and then maybe that would discourage people from protesting or for putting forth their effort because they may not have, and still may have a valid reason, purpose for the protest. That's more in line with what I was thinking.
Chairman Hicks.
Thank you for your comments. I see where you're coming from.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Sponsor.
Representative Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sponsor, serving on Fiscal Review Committee, we have way too many sole source contracts. Will this bill serve to increase or decrease the amount of competitive bid contracts?
Chairman Hicks.
Representative Thompson, this only deals for protests upon those contracts. This doesn't affect anyone's ability to submit any kind of proposal at all. So all this is the protest thereof.
Representative Thompson.
Thank you very much.
Representative Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move previous question.
Previous question been called. Any objection? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of House Bill 2090 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Hasten. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 80, 11 A's.
House Bill 2090 having received a constitutional majority, hereby declare passed by objection. Most reconsider table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the House has already taken up item 21. That brings the body to item 22. House Bill 2937 by Representative Johnson of Montgomery relative to local governing bodies.
Deputy Speaker Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2937 on third and final consideration.
Deputy Speaker Johnson moves passage. Probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Local Government Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment deletes the language, quote, by a majority vote and substitutes the language, quote, by a 2/3 vote.
Chairman Crawford moves adoption of Committee Amendment number 1. Probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of Committee Amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Deputy Speaker Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2937 is permissive. It allows local governing bodies with a population of 200,000 or more and with a 2/3 vote of the governing body to prohibit a person from serving on the city council and the county commission at the same time. I renew my motion.
Deputy Speaker Johnson renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Pearson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Speaker. And sponsor, there's confirmation here. One, is this only affecting Montgomery County?
Deputy Speaker Johnson.
Representative, this will affect any county that has a population of 200,000 or more. It's permissive, and the governing body would have to vote with 2/3 vote to adopt this.
Representative Pearson.
Thank you so much. So concern that I have, section A, upon approval under subdivision C, a member of a county governing body shall not simultaneously serve as a member of the governing body of a municipality within the county for whom the member is a commissioner during the member's term of office. If people elected somebody to serve in the city and the county, why are we passing a law, though permissive, for them not to be able to serve if the constituents in the community want for them to serve? And the concern that I have, sponsor, is I know what the abuse of authority looks like and how people in power can misuse their power because they have a majority to force people out of office. And this would particularly target, or could, if somebody has 2/3, as I think was mentioned, could potentially target a member to be disallowed from serving in roles or positions that they were actually elected into. And so what's wrong with constituents being able to determine who should serve in their county and their city?
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Representative Piercy. This was brought to me by my local governing bodies. So that's the only reason I brought it.
Representative Pearson.
Thank you so much, and I can appreciate that. And I appreciate the bills that are brought up by our constituents that we advocate for. But I think part of what we have to do, and the intention that we have when making state law that's going to impact your community, right? It's not just going to impact your constituents. That's all of us, all 95 counties being impacted by this legislation. Is we need to be a little bit more critical about the consequences. And so I do not want to deprive our constituents of having the right to elect the people who they believe will best serve them. I disagree a lot with sometimes the people that get elected into those positions, but nevertheless, us choosing or allowing for county commissions to choose who gets on the ballot, I do not think is a wise decision. And that's regardless of the political party of the person or what have you. If voters go to the polls and they say, I want this person to be on county commission and to be on city council, that's their choice. If they don't want them, don't vote for them. But for us to have a law that prevents our constituents from electing whoever they want for county commission or city council, I think that's abridging people's rights. To be able to use their vote as their voice for the people to represent them. If it's too much of a job, they'll vote them out because they're ineffective, right? At being a city councilor or a county commissioner or both. But I don't think we should be using our power to then deprive citizens of selecting the folks to represent them, nor allow counties to make that decision for constituencies either, particularly due to the abuses of power that we know are possible and rampant. Thank you for answering the question, sponsor and speaker.
Representative Mitchell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Call question on the bill.
Question's been called. Is there objection? I see it. One objection. That's not enough. 3. All right. We're voting on previous question. All those in favor of previous question, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 81, 11 nays.
Previous question prevails. We are voting. All those in favor of House Bill 2937 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 84, 8 nays.
House Bill 2937 has received a constitutional majority. Everybody clerk passed without objection. The motion for reconsider is tabled. Call next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2125 by Chairman Grills and others relative to periods of observance.
Representative Grills, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage on HB 2125 on third and final consideration.
Representative Grills moves passage. Following second, Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Grills, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's a group of people that, there's a little radio station back home, and they have a show on called The Party Line. And a lot of older folks listen to that, and they call in and give their opinions, sell their racers, and give their recipes on a daily basis. And those people have been great friends to me. And one of the ladies that represents that group called me and asked me if I would consider naming the month of November Christian Heritage Appreciation Month. So when she asked me to do that, and that group of individuals asked me to do that, that's the reason I brought this bill. So this legislation is to simply honor and recognize the impact that Christians and their faith has brought to our country, state, communities, and homes by encouraging Tennesseans to learn more about Christian heritage. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Grills renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Bain, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to provide a little anecdote from a group of constituents. So after the October 7th attacks in Israel, I met with Jewish constituents who came to me and were concerned about the threat of white Christian nationalism and white supremacy in Tennessee. And we worked together for weeks to create a resolution that would urge the state to honor a multi-faith and multi-religious calendar. Fast forward to committee, Representative Rusty Grills presented this bill with no debate, rushed through. Meanwhile, I showed up to committee with this resolution that I worked very diligently with my Jewish constituents, and I couldn't get a first nor a second motion. And I just wanted to highlight that in this body, we represent a diverse group of constituents and communities across the state that deserve not to feel alienated or isolated because of one religious ideology. And I will not be voting for this as someone who represents a diverse district who cares deeply about the state and what goes on here. I plan to bring the resolution forward next year, and I would really like support in terms of urging the state to consider all religions and a multi-faith calendar. Thank you.
Representative Grills, anything? All right. Representative Shaw, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too am a little bit concerned about this, Mr. Chairman, because I think when we get into start recognizing certain groups, everybody would probably want this same recognition. And because religious is a freedom, it's an act of freedom based upon what your faith is and the God you serve. I really think it's kind of a slippery slope to recognize any one group when it comes to our faith. I believe for the benefit of us being a good state as we are, we should really refrain from that. I just saw a demonstration on this floor earlier this morning where I hated to see where we made an issue of something out of an issue that weren't. And I think that's what we're about to do with religion, because there's one faith, one God, one faith, and one baptism. And it doesn't really matter what you say you believe, there's only one heaven. And there's only one hell. And I think for us to start recognizing people's faith in this God we all believe in, we're moving in a direction that we all could regret in the future. And from what I know about the Word of God in the Bible, I will be voting against this particular piece of legislation, not because I don't think these people need to be recognized, but because I believe they got a Bible to read and a God to serve, and that's between them and their God, and not for what I believe or do not believe. For that reason, I can't vote for this kind of legislation. Thank you.
Representative Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do understand that different people have different views, That's the reason this legislation encourages people. It does not require anyone to do anything. It's strictly an encouragement.
Representative Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move previous question.
There's objection on previous question. We're on the board. All those in favor of previous question, vote aye. All those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Aye, 68, 19 nays.
Previous question prevails. We are voting. All those in favor of House Bill 2125, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 70, 13 nays, 3 present, not voting.
House Bill 2125 and received the constitutional majority. Everybody declare passed without objection. The motion for reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2391 by Chairman Lafferty, relative to voting.
Chairman Lafferty, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2391 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Lafferty moves passage. Public sector. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Lafferty, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill changes the start date for absentee voting at nursing homes from 29 days to 27 days. When the original law passed to change absentee voting, it was to ensure that same-day voter registration and voting did not happen. Unfortunately, there's a small window under the current state law where this is allowed, even though it's rare. Under current Tennessee law, voter registration ends 30 days before an election unless the final day lands on a holiday or a weekend, then it is extended to the next business day. When elections are held on a Tuesday, the last day of voter registration always lands on a Sunday. Current law says that the last day has to end on a business day. So in a county primary and presidential primary elections, it moves to that Monday. But in November general elections, it moves to a Tuesday sometimes due to Columbus Day. So by changing this law from 29 days to 27 days, it will correct those unintended consequences and stop the 1, sometimes 2-day, same-day voter registration loophole. And with that, I renew my motion.
Chairman Lafferty renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Pearson, you recognize.
Thank you, Speaker. Sponsor, just want to make sure I'm reading the right thing here. This is related to people who are in nursing homes. Is that correct?
Chairman Lafferty.
I appreciate the question, and I refer back to my earlier comments.
Representative Pearson.
Okay. Let me tell you what I'm reading. The County Election Commission may begin the voting at the nursing homes 29 days before an election. And substituting instead, the County Election Commission may begin the voting at the nursing homes only 27 days before an election. This act takes effect upon becoming law, the public welfare requirement. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here, because you're advocating that we limit the amount of time that people in nursing homes have to vote. This is actually absurd. We're limiting the time that people in our districts who are in nursing homes, senior citizens, people who are part of elderly care, are getting to participate in the democratic process. I cannot, and your explanation didn't do a very good job of explaining why this is a good idea. But I do know that these erosions that continue to happen, that continue to try and prevent people's access to the ballot, that continue to shorten the amount of time that folks have to get their ballots in, is hurtful and harmful overall to all of our constituents. It does not make any sense that we would have legislation attacking folks in nursing homes who are trying to turn in their ballot and who more than likely need a little bit more time to do so. Nursing homes. Like, this sponsor is beyond any comprehension for why we would do such an action. And I really ask colleagues that we think intentionally about whether or not we want to prevent people from nursing homes from having the time that they need to be able to cast their ballots in an election in our state. Like, that doesn't make any sense. This is ridiculous. And this is not making any elections safer. This is not increasing the amount of people that we have participating in our elections. This is nothing more than an attack on people who live in nursing homes, our constituents who live in nursing homes' ability to be able to cast their ballot from 29 days to 27 days. And so with that, this is the reason I won't support this legislation. And thank you, Speaker.
Representative Jones, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for seeing us this time. It takes a special type of cruelty to bully senior citizens in nursing homes. I just want to say that. That's what this bill is about, lowering voting days in a nursing home. No one can go back to their district and say, I'm proud I cut the number of early voting days at a nursing home in my district. That is shameful. We should be expanding voting, making it easier for our senior citizens to vote, make sure that they feel like they can be a part of our democracy, not bullying them with unnecessary legislation. And the sponsor has not given us any reason that we need this legislation. It does nothing to serve our constituents. It does nothing to serve the common good. So when you all vote aye, as you all fall in line to always do, ask yourselves, why are you making it harder for seniors in your district to vote? And to the seniors who see this vote, I hope you see that these folks here are voting to pass a law that is bullying senior citizens in nursing homes, that serves no legitimate government purpose, that serves no legitimate purpose of election integrity, but does nothing but try and make it harder for our seniors to vote. And that is so sad. That is so sad. Because one day when you're all in nursing homes, I hope somebody comes to help you vote.
Representative Love, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, rather. To the sponsor, just one question here. With this legislation, will the days of registering persons in nursing homes be reduced? I heard you say something about going from 29 to 27 days. So will the time frame for actual registration in nursing homes be reduced?
Chairman Lafferty.
Yes, Representative, but the reason for doing this, the law right now kind of conflicts with itself. On one hand, it says that you can only register people to vote up to 39 days before the election, but it also says that if that day falls on a Sunday or a holiday, then you must move that to the next business day. So what happens sometimes is that 30th day lands on a Sunday, which then pushes it to registering to vote and voting on that 29th day, which is not the intent of the original law. So this simply takes that little quirk, if you will, out of it and restores it to the original intent.
Representative Love.
Speaker, and I heard the explanation you gave, I think, in local government. I do have concerns that even if we reduce it by 1 or 2 days, it is a reduction. So have some concerns about that, but thank you for answering my questions.
Representative Travis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Call previous question.
Previous question been called. Any objection? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of House Bill 2391, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 67, 21 nays.
House Bill 2391, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Let journal reflect Representative Gillespie is excused. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 590 by Chair Lady Littleton, relative to children. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chair Lady Littleton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 0613.
Chair Lady Littleton moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 613, probably seconded without objection. So ordered. Chair Lady Littleton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 0613 on third and final consideration.
Chair Lady Littleton moves passage of Senate Bill 613 on third and final consideration, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Civil Justice Committee Amendment number 1, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chair Lady Littleton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As amended, this authorizes the Department of Children's Services to include in the permanency plan of a child who is in foster care for at least 6 months as a result of abuse or neglect, the requirement that the parent complete trauma-informed education prior to the child being returned home, authorizes DCS to work with nonprofit organizations to develop training materials and delivery pathways, which will be via electronic and means at no additional cost to the state. I renew my motion.
Chair Lady Littleton renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to tell the chair lady that this is a good bill. I appreciate you bringing it. And here I am. It's absolutely needed. Thank you so much. Did I sign on to this one? I think I might have been trying to get you to get it passed before I signed on so that it wouldn't sink your bill. But thank you. Thank you for bringing it. It's good legislation.
Representative Miller, did I see was nope. All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 613, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
Senate Bill 613, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The most read series table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that completes the regular calendar.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the House has a message calendar.
Take up the first message, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 619 by Representative Travis relative to children's services. Mr. Speaker, on March 4th, 2024, the Senate substituted House Bill 619 for Senate Bill 447, adopted Amendment 1, and passed House Bill 619 as amended.
Chairman Travis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to concur with Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Travis moves to concur in Senate Amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Sponsor, would you explain the amendment that we're about to adopt?
Chairman Travis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, the Senate amendment, we passed this bill last year and the Senate just passed this year. So they put their amendment on, which says the 15 days prior to proposed discard of a delinquent child who was committed to the custody of the Department of Children's Services.
Leader Camper.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Amendment number 1, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 89, no nays.
Senate Amendment number 1, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare concurred in without objection. The most read series table. Call up next message, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that completes the message calendar.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Unfinished business.
Unfinished business. Leader under. Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After conferred with the clerk and the Democratic leader, I move that House Bill 2619 and House Bill 2873 be heard in the Corrections Subcommittee next week.
You've heard the motion. Any objection? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that House Bill 2919 and House Bill 2859 and House Bill 2926 be heard in the Civil Justice Subcommittee next week.
You've heard the motion. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that House Bill 2925 be heard in the Utilities Subcommittee next week.
You've heard the motion. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that House Bills 1,586, 1,588, 1,591, 1,594, 1,821, 1,823, 1,904, 2,030, 2,035, 2,689, 2,695, 2,809, 2,883, and 2,908 be heard in the Civil Subcommittee Firearms Calendar on April 2nd.
You've heard the motion. Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that House Bill 2665 be heard in the Children and Family Committee next week.
You've heard the motion. Any objection? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the rules be suspended for immediate introduction and consideration of House Resolution number 119.
Mr. Clerk, please read the caption.
House Resolution 119 by Leader Lambert, the resolution to approve annual events by certain 501c organizations in accordance with the provisions of Article 11, Section 5 of the Constitution of Tennessee and pursuant to the Tennessee Nonprofit Gaming Law.
You've heard the caption. Any objections? Without objection, the rules are suspended. Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what I always refer to as the late filed charitable gaming resolution. Many of your organizations have filed and they are on this resolution. You may want to review that just so you can let them know they did make the resolution. After having reviewed that, Mr. Speaker, I move adoption of House Resolution number 119.
Leader Lambert moves adoption of House Resolution 119, probably seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Resolution 119 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 82, 6 nays, 1 present, unvoted.
House Resolution 119 having received the vote in the affirmative by 2/3 members of the elected 103rd General Assembly, I hereby declare adopted without objection the motion to reconsider its table. Mr. Clerk, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, we have a message from the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I'm directed to return to the House. House Bill 843, substitute for the Senate bill on the same subject, amended and passed by the Senate.
All right, next order, Mr. Oh, with that Monday's message calendar. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Announcements.
Announcements. Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I didn't get a chance to do this during welcome and honoring, but we lost a true staple to the North Memphis and Douglas, Tennessee community this week in Brian Clay. Brian Clay represented the Douglas community with style and class. He was 54 years old. He was a graduate of Lemoyne-Owen College and just a really, really, really good and solid dude. And so I ask that we take a moment of silence for the Clay family and let them know that we share in the loss of Mr. Brian Clay and that we love and put our arms around the family. And if you will, a moment of silence. Amen. Thank you.
Representative Spickey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, the Education and Instruction Subcommittee will not meet March 20th, 2024, and is now closed, subject to the call of the chair.
Representative Pearson.
Thank you, Speaker. I mentioned this in welcome and honoring that the Wells family was here. I know the bill passed in the Senate after a very vitriolic conversation with a senator from Shelby County, but want them who are watching to know we appreciate them, their struggle, their fight to make this institution more fair and more just, and to make sure people live and operate with a level of integrity. And so to Mrs. Rovon Wells, to Mr. Rodney Wells, we thank you and appreciate you, and we won't stop fighting for you and alongside you.
Representative Capley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I apologize. I missed this earlier, but Santa Fe Wildcats are going to the state championship on Friday. We want to wish them good luck. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative White. Representative White.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just want to make this announcement. As you know, we in Shelby County asked for the Tennessee Highway Patrol and the governor to send more troops down to help for the speeding on our interstates. I got this text from a constituent. He says, please express thanks to the Tennessee Highway Patrol for their great work yesterday on I-240. There must have been at least 20 Tennessee Highway Patrol officers writing traffic citations. This is the kind of police work Shelby County requires to keep everyone safe. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Tennessee Highway Patrol.
Representative Sherrill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a quick announcement. This coming Saturday, March the 16th of 2024, we have a gentleman sitting in the audience with us today is having a birthday. Representative Kelly Keeson, make him a wish and happy birthday.
Representative Ritchie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This upcoming Sunday is not only St. Patrick's Day, but it is also time for the clash at the Coliseum. So anybody that's going to be tuning in for the Bristol race, it's Bristol, baby. Let's go.
Representative Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to remind everyone that this coming Tuesday is Ag Day. Starting at 7:30, they'll have ribeye biscuits, tenderloin biscuits, chicken and biscuits. And about 9:30, we'll have the festivities out on the lawn. And that'll be throwing bales of straw. So if anybody can chunk them, bring it on.
All right.
And that will,
Representative Grills.
and that will also be the last Ag sub.
All right. Representative Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, on Tuesday, the 19th, the Criminal Justice Subcommittee will meet at regular time. Due to the length of our calendars, and I would encourage you to listen and take note, we will be continuing Tuesday's calendar after full Criminal Justice Committee Tuesday afternoon. Criminal full starts at 4:30. Immediately following criminal full, criminal sub will continue the calendar that they're working on from Tuesday morning. Everybody have a great weekend.
Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I forgot to do this earlier. I want to announce that for the first time in the school's history, Fisk University's women's basketball team is going to a postseason tournament. They'll be playing in the NAIA tournament up in Indiana. They're the 16th seed, playing the 4th seed. So we want to cheer them on and wish Fisk University women's basketball team much success in the tournament.
Representative Hazelwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have two sets of announcements. First, the UTC women won their conference championship. They will be going to the tournament, but on things more near and dear, perhaps to the whole body's heart, just a reminder that if you have an appropriations amendment, it can be filed in my office. That's room 606 until 5 o'clock on Monday. If you're going to need legal services help in drafting any of those appropriations, we need you to get those into legal services by 5 o'clock tomorrow. Thank you.
Representative Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, just a brief reminder, Monday at 10 a.m., joint rule review, joint government operations rule review. Thank you.
Representative Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and for my colleagues. I heard all the excitement in your voices as you were bragging about your local team's opportunity to maybe taste that sweet taste of victory this weekend and hopefully culminating in a championship for your school. I just wanted you to know that I try not to announce this every time, but just so you know, the District 95 trophy case was added to last week by the Briarcrest Christian School boys team. Shout out to them for their Division II large classification state title. But I know that next week you're going to come in here and you're going to claim that your district may resemble mine. I want you to know I want that for you. I want you to feel that encouragement from whenever you get to add to your trophy case. So good luck to all of you schools as they chase those contained in District 95. Thank you.
Representative Holtzclaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it pleases me to inform you that the Departments and Agencies Subcommittee has completed its business and it closed due to the call of the chair. Thank you.
Representative Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The House Transportation Committee will hear its final calendar Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock, and we'll close subject to the call of the chair. Then we'll all go get a ribeye biscuit from Representative Grills.
All right, next order, Mr. Clerk.
Roll call.
Roll call. Please take the roll, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, 88 members present.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
That completes the regular order, Mr. Speaker.
Leader Cochran, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House stand in recess until 4 p.m. on Monday, March 18th, 2024.
Without objection, the House stands in recess till 4 p.m. on Monday, March 18th, 2024.